Are you guys ready for this week? It's about to go down. We have election week and everything else that's going on. This week, we finally have Mars entering Leo on Monday, which, by the way, Monday is like the best day of this week. I'm really looking forward to Monday. We'll talk a little bit more about it. But some of the other highlights that we have is Mercury is entering shadow on Thursday. There's a lot going on Thursday that I'm going to be talking about this week, as well as we do have Venus squaring Neptune. So in all, there's not that many highlights this week. However, this week is, of course, you know, the week that we all know exactly what is going on. And so there's going to be a lot of crazy shit going on. So let's go ahead and get started talking about it. So welcome back to the Astrology Report, this time for November 4th through November 10th of 2024. If you don't know me already, my name is Cam White, and I'm a professional astrologer. That's why I'm making astrology videos, and I've been doing this for almost a decade, and I like talking about the transiting astrology and letting you know how to best use it for your life. With that being said, I'm still running a discount on my consultations, $100 off. You'll be watching this on Sunday, and that deal ends midnight on Sunday. So if you want to book, this would be the time to do it, because sometime around January, I'm going to be closing my books off to the public, and it's only going to be for people over on my memberships on my website or previous clients. So if you want to jump on that, this would be the time to do it. Like I said, $100 off. It's going to end tonight. We're already booked out for November, and I believe we're getting close to filling out December. So make sure you check that out. So we start Monday off with the moon in Sagittarius, first making an opposition to Jupiter and then making a conjunction to Venus. For our first highlight of the week, we will have the sun making a trine to Saturn, and then we also have Mars going into Leo. A lot of fiery energy going on Monday. I'm actually really looking forward to it. What I like about the moon in Sagittarius going opposite Jupiter and Gemini and then conjoining Venus and Sag is, I've been talking about this now for almost 6 months. With Jupiter and Gemini, Jupiter is about abundance and hope and faith, but it's in the sign of Gemini, which Gemini is all about thinking about things and information. And it's hard to have a bunch of faith. It's hard to have a bunch of hope when we're being rational about everything. And I feel like the moon is in Sag going opposite Jupiter, where there's this hey, I want to have fun. I want to be explorative, but I can't really do that if I'm thinking about everything. And the moon going opposite Jupiter is kind of like this realization of the more that I invest my emotions into thinking about how fun is going to look, the less fun I have. The moon then conjoins Venus, where it's you know what, let's just have fun. Let's just, go out. Let's not worry about what we look like. Let's not worry about what other people think about us. Let's just have a good time. So there's something about Monday that is really exciting about moving forward, about, setting a goal, achieving that goal, or at least just getting excited about that goal itself. And the big thing, something I wrote down for Monday that I wanted to kind of emphasize is don't worry about the how. I think what's really important is that you set the intention and that you make it very clear that you will get to where you need to go, and you don't need to worry about how you're going to get there. All you need to worry about is that how committed are you to getting there? And I think that's also a part of the sun trining Saturn as our first highlight for the day. Again, I really think, in the Zodiac course that we're going over in my memberships, which again, I've been getting emails of people being oh, when can I sign up for the membership course? You could sign up literally whenever the hell you want. We're just doing each quarter, we're going over a new, lecture series. So right now we're going over the Zodiac, and I just did a lecture about the divisions of the Zodiac signs. So if you don't know this already, there's a bunch of ways to divide the Zodiac signs, but one of them is commanding and obeying, or seeing. And what's really funny is I've always kind of made this joke where if you look at online astrology memes, there's always this joke of stay away from Pisces men are the worst. And I've always felt like Pisces and Scorpio have this deeper understanding of each other than any other sign. They just, I don't know, something just resonates with them. And what's funny is Scorpio and Pisces, there's a commanding and obeying relationship there, as well as a seeing each other relationship in at least the Zodiac scheme that Paul of Alexandria goes over, which we're going over in the lecture series. But anyway, I always found that really, really interesting. And the reason I'm bringing this up is the sun is in Scorpio, right? Yeah, it's in Scorpio season. Typically, everything is dead and dying around this time, which is funny because here in Denver, we haven't got our first snow yet. So everything's still really pretty, which is typically weird. But the sun being our kind of our energy, our drive, it's in a Mars-ruled sign. Mars is in Leo, which we're going to talk about. So there's a little bit more drive and a little bit more energy, but it's trining Saturn. It's okay, what are we going to do with it? Are we going to discipline ourselves with it? Are we going to carry this momentum forward in a long, sustainable way? And I think a lot of that comes down to the watery stuff, right? Making sure our emotions are in check, making sure our emotions are regulated and that we can handle ourselves as we go about. Because it's really easy to get excited for one thing, and then a couple days later, the excitement drops off and you don't want to do it anymore. I don't want you to do that with the sun making a trine to Saturn. But that brings us to Mars entering Leo. There's a lot to talk about with Mars and Leo. Number one, Mars is going to go retrograde here in a month. So we only have about a month of this energy. And here's the other thing I want you to think about with Mars and Leo. In May, Mars will enter Leo again, and it will leave shadow and eventually go through the rest of the sign of Leo. By the time we get to May, That's when Saturn's going to be in Aries. Neptune's going to be in Aries. We'll have the nodes switching signs. We'll be done with that Venus retrograde, that Mercury retrograde. We'll be getting ready for Uranus going into Gemini. We'll be getting ready for Jupiter going into Cancer. And there's going to be a lot different by the time Mars goes into Leo the next time. And what I find really interesting about this is like, this is kind of like Mars goes into Leo, but not yet. We don't get to experience all of that all the way right now. Mars going into Leo, we're going to feel a lot more confident. We're going to feel a lot more brave. We're going to feel a lot more like the center of attention. Now, what's really fun about this is with Mars and Leo is, given that Mars was in Cancer before, where it doesn't do all that well, Mars leaves a zodiac sign where it is debilitated. And it doesn't necessarily get like dignity in this moment, but it does, it's, again, not fallen opposite Pluto at its most fallen degree. So there's something really exciting about Monday where all this fire energy really kicks off. The biggest thing about Mars and Leo that I want to emphasize is Mars is about fights and conflicts and energy and drive, and it's in Leo. Like, it's really fueled by like our desire to be ourselves and be authentic and our willpower kind of thing. There's a lot of willpower going on here, but Mars is slowing down. Mars is not moving all that fast. So before you kind of get ahead of yourself and think, oh, I could bite off more than I can chew. Oh, I could do all this. Just, like, again, when it comes to like weightlifting, you don't go to the gym every day and hit your max. Like, you get closer and closer and closer to that. Mars in Leo is going to make you feel like you can go to the gym every day and hit your max. You don't want to do that. You're going to injure yourself and you're going to look dumb. And then it's, again, going to make you feel weak when you're not. So on Monday, I want you to experience the fire energy. I want you to have a lot of fun with it, but just understand it's going to be easy to lean into this idea that like you can do it all. You have all this confidence, but just know as the month goes on, that energy is going to get weaker and weaker and weaker. And you're going to realize, hey, maybe you can't do it all. So Tuesday, election day. But more importantly, it is Parker's birthday. So if you don't wish Parker a birthday, the candidate that you don't want to win will win. So if you want your candidate to win, you have to wish Parker a happy birthday in the comments, okay? So then we get to Tuesday, and we all know what day Tuesday is. So here's how this is going to go, by the way, and I'm going to explain this. Tuesday, we're not going to know the results. Tuesday, we're not going to know the results. Wednesday, we are not going to know the results. But Thursday, we will. And I'm going to explain it because the astrology is really funny. So let's talk about Tuesday. So the moon will be in Sagittarius and it's going to square Neptune. That happens at like the beginning of the day. So again, part of me wonders, the moon in Sag is excited, right? Like we have like this visionary, like, let's go. Like, I just want to go to the beach. I just want to go to the mountains. I want to have all this fun. But it squares Neptune. So there's this kind of like, oh, like how real is that? Have you ever been like excited about dreaming or, you kind of had like a vision to do something and then you just kind of think about it a little bit more and you get a little bit overwhelmed with, the specifics. Like it's easier just to be like, yeah. Like for example, when you're partying with your friends and you're like, let's start this business. It's way easier to say that than when you start getting into the weeds of everything. You're like, oh yeah, we're not starting this business. So the moon squares Neptune. So there's a little bit of questioning, a little bit of confusion of things going on. And then the moon goes into Capricorn. The moon going into Capricorn on a Tuesday night is really funny because everything gets really serious. And, I would really just say, don't watch the news. Make sure you're getting things done. Because here's the other thing too. I went over on my memberships, I do something called the game plan, which is essentially a monthly horoscope, but just like not me just being like, oh, this is like, I'm just kind of fucking going deep in it every single month. That's the easiest way to put it. And I really went off about politics. And like, don't get me wrong, I'm a human being. I'm not perfect with any of this stuff. But this shit steals your fucking energy. It is literally like highway robbery with your energy. And we allow ourselves to get robbed. And it's one of those things where like, am I going to watch, the election stuff? Yeah, probably. We'll see what goes down. I mean, I have like predictions on this. So like, why not? Even though I still don't think we're going to know things until Thursday. But just realistically, like, make sure you're getting things done. Make sure you're occupying your mind. Because I also think, too, a lot of people are a lot more sensitive to this stuff than they really think. I really think a lot of people are thinking that this is going to be the end of the world if, Trump wins or end of the world if Kamala wins. Guess what? Like, this is what I like about astrology. It's like, oh, well, all this stuff is happening anyway. It doesn't really matter. It's just who's steering the boat. Titanic sinking. Who's steering the boat? That's really what this election is about. But with that, just make sure you're being a little bit calm. But then we get to Wednesday. And the moon, while it's in Capricorn, is going to make you a sextile to the sun in Scorpio. And all I can think about is I haven't watched this movie yet, so I don't really know what it references or means. But all I thought about was All Quiet on the Western Front. Like, there's something about Wednesday that's really quiet, that nothing's really happening. The sun's in Scorpio. We're a little bit on edge. The sun in Scorpio, if you ever quit, I quit nicotine. Those 3 days you're quitting nicotine, you're just like lockjaw. You're like, when you're like yacked out, like you got that neck jaw thing. You're just kind of like a little bit on edge. But the moon in Capricorn is like stoic, cold, not invested in our emotions. That's kind of the vibe on Wednesday, but that's it. The moon is the one luminary is making an aspect to another luminary. Not much going on. Really not much going on Wednesday. It's very quiet. And I just think there's something about Wednesday is like, what's kind of the buildup. And again, maybe they do come up with the results on Tuesday. I fucking doubt that. But Wednesday, either way, is not much going on. But we then get to Thursday, where the moon, while it's in Capricorn, is first going to make a trine to Uranus. Then it's going to sextile Neptune. And then it's going to conjoin Pluto. And then the moon will go into Aquarius, and it will go opposite Mars in Leo, and Mercury enters shadow on Thursday. Now, between you and me, we can look at Thursday and be like, oh, yeah, this is when shit's hitting the fan on Thursday. This is what's going to happen on Thursday. They're still not going to have the count ready on Thursday. But someone's just going to blurt something, and they're going to just run with it. And then there's going to be all this contention. So the moon, like I've been saying, because Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are at the end degrees of these zodiac signs, when the moon is making this aspect to it, it's just these really fast kind of connections. And just to me, they're really not that crazy. It's just kind of like these weird kind of a feeling before the moon ingresses into a new zodiac sign. And we'll get a very similar feeling when the moon ingresses into new zodiac signs, when Pluto's in Aquarius and Neptune's in Aries and Uranus is in Gemini. It's like all this new stuff immediately. But the moon going into Aquarius and then going opposite Mars, people are going to be upset. Think about it. The moon is about our emotions, and it's in the sign of Aquarius, the sign of the people. This 0-degree Aquarius spot is really interesting because if you remember, in 2020, the Mars-Saturn conjunction was at 0 degrees Aquarius, and we all got locked down. And I don't know if you remember this, but a lot of this was, again, like, people just arguing over, you need to stay inside or wash your hands or wear gloves. And, the other day I saw someone walking with their groceries, and they looked like April of 2020, like, full gloves, gigantic face mask. Like, it wasn't even Halloween. Like, it would just look like April of 2020, someone going grocery shopping. But the moon in Aquarius will go opposite Mars in Leo, where this is what I'm really looking at is, again, Mars is about fights and conflicts. In Leo, it's like pride, passion, energy, like the self, the individual versus the moon in Aquarius, the group, the collective. There's this tension between them. There's this literally like Mexican standoff between them. And so the moon in Aquarius going opposite Mars in Leo is really like really getting you worked up. And again, this is for both sides here. It's going to be really easy for all of us to get like worked up and clutch our pearls, which the pearl clutching over everything is so insane. It genuinely, like, again, like people, what was it? Tony Hinchcliffe made a joke about Puerto Rico, and everyone were just like, guys, calm down. Really calm down. So Mercury goes into shadow though. And this is the kicker. And the reason I have predicted some sort of a contingent election, and let me kind of clarify my thoughts here. The reason I've predicted a contingent election is because of not only Mercury in shadow, but Mars going retrograde. And the reason I've used those words specifically is the way I've looked at this is, we're not getting a result, but a result is going to happen at some point, right? Like, for example, in the 2000 election, it came down to Florida and the Supreme Court had to rule one over the other. Now, that wasn't really a contingent election, but I look at this as like, this isn't like we just count all the votes and someone gets more than the other. This seems kind of like drawn out. This seems kind of like there's some sort of we don't really know, or something is missing, something like that. And so I feel like something formal like a contingent election makes a little bit more sense to me. And I could be wrong, but I don't necessarily think this is about one person gets more votes than the other. I think this is kind of like we're not really sure, so X, Y, and Z happens. And if you don't know what a contingent election again is no one gets 270 electoral votes. So then it pretty much goes to the Senate and the House, and they vote on the president and the vice president, and it could literally be fucking anybody. Like the Leo King has J.D. Vance becoming the president, which his chart is really interesting, but also the Leo King, I think me and David are the only people that are predicting a contingent election. So we might be right, we might be wrong. I don't know. But there's something about Thursday that just seems like someone's blurting something out and that this is the answer, but we're not actually there yet. And again, that could be Trump being like, we won, but that's not all the way yet. Or Kamala being like, we won, but we're not actually all the way there yet. And so for your own personal life on Thursday, blurting things out isn't necessarily good. There's going to be this, again, it's Mercury in shadow, right? Like, all of a sudden, this thing comes up. We're going to come back to this in 30-ish days, 3 weeks, 21 days. I forgot how long a Mercury retrograde cycle is. But Mercury's going to come back to this degree. Whatever's happening on this day, we're going to come back to in just a little bit. So pay attention to what is communicated, to what is said, to what you say, to what you think, to what your plans are, because they may not go exactly according to plan as you think they will. And so then we get to Friday. The moon is going to be in Aquarius. It's going to make a sextile to Mercury again, in detriment, in Sagittarius, also in shadow, and it's going to make a square to the sun. And this is kind of like, this reminds me of, there's this really popular video from COVID, and I want Parker to share this. I'll have to send her the link to it, but it's like these guys, I think they're like in Brooklyn or something. It's all of these like dudes out in the street talking about COVID, and someone touches his hand. Someone like this one guy touches this other guy, and he's like, "Stop touching people with your hands."
Just like this. It does not come from the influenza virus, you jackass.
I didn't feel it come.
It has to come from the same virus to be in the same family. Viruses come in families.
Stop touching niggas with your hands.
Like, this is like, again, 5 minutes after we found out about COVID, and no one really knows what's going on, but everyone has this like urge to share and this like urge to like, again, self-police in a way. In that video, what I find really funny about that video is it's coming from the space of like they're trying, if that makes sense, but they don't really know what they're doing. It's like there's just kind of like this panic and fear, and be like, oh, let's just do this to be safe. That's kind of the feeling on Friday, and that's the moon, you know, making that square to the sun too, where there's this kind of like the sun in Scorpio and the moon in Aquarius. There's this like rigidity. There's this like not wanting to comply, not wanting to see things that way. There's a lot of just kind of a rougher energy on Friday. But then we get to Saturday, and on Saturday the moon, while it's in Aquarius, will make that trine to Jupiter, and then it's going to square Uranus and then sextile Venus. Kind of an interesting lunar transit going on Saturday. But the highlight that we have on Saturday is Venus making a square to Neptune, and then the moon ingresses into Pisces. Okay. What I like about the moon in Aquarius trining Jupiter and Gemini is the same thing as like what I was saying before, like when COVID first hit, like the moon in Aquarius trining Jupiter and Gemini is like, we were all Googling stuff being like, what's this? What's that? And we're all just like sharing things, like anything that we know off the top of our head, like, oh, this happened and this happened. And it just, information just goes crazy. And we don't really actually know what we're talking about because we just don't have the time. Like when people were like, oh, it came from, you know, a bat liquid dripping on a pangolin, and then somehow it got over here, and we're all just talking, you know what I mean? We don't really know what the fuck we're talking about, but that's kind of the idea with the moon shining Jupiter and Gemini, is just sharing all these ideas, talking. Now, in your own personal life, there is this level of like success to it, of like, oh, I understand this, I understand that, I have these connections to doing all these things. My issue is the moon then squares Uranus, where all of this kind of gets disrupted. Like, again, the last thing you want to do, it reminds me of a telephone. You know, if you've played the game telephone in class, like, you know, you tell one kid another thing, and then by the time it goes around, it's a completely different story. That's the same idea. The moon squaring Uranus is like, you know, as it goes around, there's some sort of disruption down the line, but the moon in Aquarius then sextiles Venus in Sag, and there's something actually really fun about that. Like, if you've ever played telephone in class, by the time the last kid says whatever, it's just super funny because it was not the original, you know, message, and no one else got that same message. So again, what I like about the moon and sextiling Venus by the end of all of it is like just things work out at the end of the day in like a more fun, nice way. I will say, you know, going back to the election prediction thing, is I think Thursday something gets blurted out, but I don't think things are really worked out until probably sometime in December, to be honest with you, probably around Christmas when Mercury is stationing direct and Mars is, you know, in the middle of the retrograde phase. Now, Venus squares Neptune on Saturday as our highlight. And a lot of this is like, what do we want? Where are we going? What I find interesting about Venus and Sag is that it's kind of like, I can't think about it without thinking about like running away. Like, you ever tried to run away as a kid? Like, I always fantasized about it, and then like one time I actually did it, and like you just kind of like, you're like, everything's gonna be better if I run away, and then you kind of do it and you're like, what the fuck am I doing? Where am I going? Where am I gonna go? Like, this isn't gonna work. Like, why you just kind of you realize how maybe delusional it was, even though the idea of it was really fun. That's kind of the Venus square Neptune thing, is like there's this struggle between what our desires are and like what is fantasy, what is reality, what is illusion, what are we being deceived, and or like, again, Venus squaring Neptune is just like being catfished. So maybe on Saturday, if you have like a Tinder date or whatever, they're probably not going to look the way that you anticipated. But then the moon goes into Pisces on Saturday, and this is where we start getting a little bit more sensitive, start to get a little bit too touchy-feely. Maybe, again, everything's a little bit just too crazy in the world, and we need to maybe be a little bit more withdrawn, and time to be a little bit more quiet. And that continues on into Sunday, because on Sunday is when the moon is in Pisces. It's going to square Mercury in Sag, and it's going to conjoin Saturn in Pisces. And then also on Sunday, Venus is at 29 degrees Sagittarius. Venus is on my ascendant. I hope I look very sexy and great on Sunday, and I need all of the compliments in the world. But the moon on Sunday will be in Pisces. and it's going to square Mercury and Sag, and then it's going to conjoin Saturn. This is a lot of too loud. Now, I'm going to share with you guys. I have a really nice apartment. This is the nicest apartment I've ever lived in. I live in a part of downtown that gets so fucking loud. I have homeless people, and when I say homeless, let me be clear. I have schizophrenics on fentanyl screaming bloody murder for all hours of the day and night. At the same time, there's like a communist of America preaching across the street. At the same time, there's a marching band. At the same time, there's a goddamn bagpipe player can you do work? Imagine you trying to do any sort of work when there's a bagpipe playing for 5 fucking hours of the day. It's the most depressing fucking shit. So we got a bagpipe, we got a marching band, I've got some guy playing a violin, I've got tweakers yelling, I've got the music from the restaurant downstairs that's playing. It is so loud. I'm legitimately. Oh, by the way, and then there's motorcycles. There's a guy that literally has no fucking job, no fucking life, no girlfriend, no kids, no responsibilities. And he does wheelies, really shitty wheelies, by the way, up and down my street for 6 hours a fucking day. And it's so fucking loud. I'm losing it. And then why am I yapping about this? Because Sunday, like, I'm getting to a point where, like, I'm getting schizophrenic with how fucking loud everything is. Like, I can't do anything. Like, I'm genuinely going crazy. Like, I need to be in like a padded crazy person room. I need it to be that quiet. I need to just sit in that quiet energy. On Sunday, when the moon's in Pisces scoring Mercury and Sag, everything's way too loud, and then the moon conjoins Saturn where you just shut down. Like, there's times where it just gets so loud, I just shut down. I just stop working because I can't concentrate. Or like there's a fight going on outside, and I'm like, oh, what's going on? It's just too much. That's the idea on Sunday. So Sunday is just really loud. I think Sunday's honestly probably really hard too. So I would just say be emotionally prepared for Sunday. We get to next week, and Venus is going to ingress into Capricorn. Oh, I love Venus and Capricorn. It's my favorite transit. We have Mercury scoring Saturn. Ow. We have the full moon in Taurus conjoining Uranus. Why not? We have Saturn stationing direct, and we have Mercury going opposite Jupiter. I'm actually really looking forward to that transit. And so that's this week, guys. So like I said, the discount ends at midnight tonight. So if you want to get $100 off your first consultation for new clients, go ahead and book the link below. And I'll be seeing you guys next week.